So I went on vacation last week, and a lot of stuff has happened since then. A lot of stuff.
And then we're going to Washington, D.C. to take back the White House!
Political memes are not a new thing, especially in the context of the modern-day internet age. Some of the more recent ones that I can think of off the top of my head are Ken Bone, Obama and Biden leaving the White House, Pokemon Go to the polls. With the rise of social media and information coming at you from all different directions constantly due to personalized algorithms, elections are one of the few major events of the year where everyone is paying attention to the same thing. This election cycle in particular has been a little strange because it felt like until a couple weeks ago, no one was really that into talking about the ramifications of it, because we had quite literally been here before. You know, what more could anyone possibly have to say about an election where your two choices are Donald Trump and Joe Biden? Then some unprecedented events happened. Hot damn, I sure do love unprecedented events, gotta be one of my favorite genders.
In the wake of his disastrous debate, at least 25 Democratic members of Congress are said to be ready to call on Biden to step down.
We are looking at President Trump. This does not look good. I'm going to be honest with you, from what we can see right here, it looks like they are attempting to move him out, that he may have been injured.
We have some breaking news as President Joe Biden has just announced that he is dropping out of the 2024 presidential race.
Kamala Harris speaks for the first time since President Biden dropped out.
In one term, he has already, yes, you may clap. In one term, he has already surpassed the legacy of most presidents who have served 2 terms in office.
Now, I am not necessarily here to comment on how this affects the state of the race. I am not a political commentator, you do know where to go for that. What I can tell you, though, is that this whole situation has spawned an interesting conversation about the power of internet culture. And in order to show you how we got here...
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context of all in which you live and what came before you.
We're going to have to rewind a little bit in time. So, Brat is an album by Charli XCX. Now, I have a feeling that if you are watching this video, and if you've watched one of my videos before, you know who Charli XCX is because you are gay, at least a little bit. But if you're like, I don't know who that is, I don't know who you're talking about, I just fell out of a coconut tree, I just got here. Charli is a British pop star who got her first big hit, Boom Clap, you know, the song that's in the Fault in Our Stars movie, back in like 2013. She also was on the Barbie soundtrack, and I've always been a fan. I mean, I think she's a little bit quirky, a little bit different, but she received some pretty mainstream critical acclaim this year with the release of her 6th studio album, Brat. Brat was inspired by the music of the British rave scene and has a lot of fun hyperpop and electronic influences. It is chock full of upbeat club bangers like Von Dutch, but it also has some more intimate personal moments, like the track So I, which describes Charli's relationship with the late music producer Sophie, or Girl So Confusing, which profiles a contentious relationship between Charli and another singer, which we now know to be Lorde, who ended up coming out of hiding to feature on the Girl So Confusing remix. It also goes without saying that Brat has a very distinct aesthetic that's very easy to understand and simple to latch onto. The album cover is a lime green background with the word Brat written on it in Arial text. In terms of why it is caught on so much, I think it just kind of really speaks to the terminally online culture that we find ourselves in. Nothing about this should be visibly appealing. It almost reads as if it's a shitpost, but the fun, ironic juxtaposition here is that the music on this album is actually really good. But what does this all have to do with the election? So Kamala Harris is currently running to be the president of the United States. For my wonderful friends across the pond, Kamala Harris is a politician from California who has served as the vice president in the Biden administration for the last 4 years. Harris did run for president back in 2020. Her campaign was not stupendously well received. She has earned the reputation of being a cop because she formerly served as a prosecutor in the state of California and was hammered on her criminal justice record when she was running for president. But since then, the tides have shifted somewhat in Kamala's favor, not only because she has the luxury of staying more out of the spotlight as the vice president, but also because her record in the past is being re-examined with a more favorable eye for some people, especially in comparison to somebody like Donald Trump, who is a convicted felon. If this sentiment does not apply to you specifically, you still do not like her as a candidate, I'm not here to change your mind. I'm just taking the general temperature of the room here. But as we've already mentioned, Biden stepped down, everybody threw their support behind Kamala. As of recording this video, she is pretty much presumptively the Democratic nominee for the 2024 election. And everyone is pretty excited about this because she is not Joe Biden, meaning that she can, most of the time, form a coherent sentence. If you're like, wow, that is a really low bar, yes, that's the point. The bar was on the fucking floor.
Asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look.
Even before all of this happened, Kamala had garnered like a much gentler reputation, I'd say, especially with younger voters. Because every time she did show up to something, she would just like say something goofy. She was smiling and laughing all the time. She was serious when she needed to be serious, but people have found her quirky personality kind of endearing. This has been most heavily illustrated by the coconut tree meme, which in all honesty, I avoided knowing the context of for a little bit because, and I explained this in my Ellen video, I have a very low threshold for like cringe content on the internet, but basically in some sort of press conference or something, Kamala was telling a story that her mother told her, and I still don't entirely know the context of this quote, but it was delivered in such a funny way that people really latched onto it.
I don't know what's wrong with you young people. You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context of all in which you live and what came before you.
So to put this all together, after Joe Biden stepped down, more people started talking about Kamala Harris online, which led Charli XCX to tweet the phrase, "Kamala is Brat." And from there, every Gen Xer who works in mainstream media had to figure out how to cover that like they knew what it meant.
The singer Charli XCX tweeted last night, "Kamala is Brat." And this is in reference to her album. It's called Brat. Kamala has branded her Kamala HQ Twitter page with the same aesthetic of the album. That's another Gen Z word, aesthetic. It's even becoming a trend on TikTok.
I am supposed to say, that's Brat. And for those who are not in the know the way I am, that is a cool thing. It has a color. Chartreuse is the color. You're just that girl who is a little messy and likes to party and maybe says some dumb things sometimes, end quote.
So is the idea that we're all kind of Brat and Vice President Harris is Brat?
Well,
I don't know if you're Brat. I think
right,
you aspire to
us,
be Brat.
right,
Okay, you
right.
don't just become Brat.
Oh, okay.
You have to try.
You can work at it.
I will aspire to be Brat.
I don't think you guys understand that hearing Jake Tapper say the words, "I will aspire to be Brat," nearly put me into a goddamn coma. Okay, so what does this all mean? Why is this happening? Why is the Harris campaign leading into it? Why is the Democratic Party, the most uncool bastion of American institutionalism, second only to the Republican Party, embracing an album about doing cocaine and wanting to die? My best guess is that she has a couple Gen Z members on her marketing team who are taking advantage of the fact that someone so culturally cool right now, who doesn't even live in America, actually expressed support for their candidate. For the last 4 years, nothing that organic could really happen with Joe Biden because he's like a dinosaur. Dark Brandon was like the closest they got, and that was pretty short-lived and inorganic because you could tell that if you asked Joe Biden who Dark Brandon was, he'd probably say one of his kids. Additionally, a lot of young people don't like Joe Biden right now because of the way he handled the college campus protests in regards to divesting from Israel a few months back. Now, you could argue that Kamala Harris is just as complicit in the Biden administration's stance on Israel as Joe Biden is because, you know, she is second in command to him. It's not that hard. But optically, as I said, Kamala Harris has not been in the spotlight as much as Joe Biden has been, and so she's positioned herself to win back that Gen Z vote depending on how she addresses Gaza going forward. And I think in general, people are more willing to give her a chance not only on the foreign policy stuff, but also other domestic issues because they're more full of hope now than they have been in a very long time. It doesn't matter what you even think about Joe Biden, whether or not he should have stepped down. He lost the goodwill of the people around him with his performance in that debate, showing that he is not as mentally competent as he should be to win an election. And the fact that the Democratic Party seemingly listened to that feedback and took a huge risk was enough to restore just a little bit of faith. Now, here comes the more complicated piece of all of this. Is all of this excitement actually bad? Is it propaganda that we are all susceptible to and we just don't recognize it because for us it's wrapped into the context of pop culture? Is it more ethical to just stay incredibly doom-pilled about all of it and treat Kamala Harris with the same contempt that you would naturally treat Joe Biden with after the last 4 years? I don't know the answer to that. What I do think is that it's important to remind yourself not to idolize politicians because because in most cases, being a fan of a politician and blindly following everything that they say with an unquestionable mindset is how you get this. And I think the other thing to keep in mind is that at the end of the day, this is all just content. This is a flash in the pan moment in a weird election cycle that people are getting paid to find more meaning in. And memes like this are so incredibly fickle. Like, I don't think people understand the perfect storm of things that had to happen for this meme to be a cool thing and not a cringe thing. And she could instantly ruin it. Like, that's how dangerous of a game her campaign is playing here by embracing the Brat meme. Because, like, the moment that Hillary Clinton tweets out the Brat meme, it's done. Like, it's done. You're already in, like, gray territory if Pete tweets about it. Now, the last thing I want to talk about here is that people are actually criticizing Charli XCX for this tweet because I guess it's the equivalent of an endorsement of sorts. Like, it's kind of crazy that all she tweeted is Kamala is Brat and then refused to elaborate. But then people started quote tweeting Charli and using the girl, the genocide meme, which is a meme that I fucking hate. In my opinion, if you have any actual respect for oppressed people and you're using that meme or that phrase as a one-up gotcha to get likes on Twitter, I don't respect you. I don't trust you. There are much better ways to articulate that sentiment. We're all too comfortable throwing that shit around just because it's coded in like hey girly language. And so it makes us more comfortable. Say what you mean. And to be clear, I'm not even saying that if you hold that opinion, then that means your opinion is invalid. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying that if you actually hold empathy for the people that you say you're advocating for, then like take the time to effectively communicate your position. You're doing your cause a disservice with this one-up gotcha shit. It's weird. But anyway, the argument here is that Charli XCX should not be supporting Kamala Harris because of the Biden administration's stance on Israel. And like I said, I think that's a fine opinion to have. I'm not gonna sit here and lecture you on who I think you should support or vote for, assuming you've done the due diligence in educating yourself to make an informed decision. What I do think is interesting to comment on here, though, is how the tide has turned in regards to celebrities and politics. Because there was a time where things were so doomer around here in the Democratic Party orbit that people were literally blaming Beyonce for waiting too long to endorse Beto O'Rourke when he was running for Congress in Texas. Like, I'm glad we've kind of grown past the point where we're intertwining celebrity status with access to power, because Beyonce is not the reason that Beto O'Rourke lost to Ted Cruz in Texas, just like Taylor Swift is not the reason that Joe Biden won in 2020 because she baked some cookies. Like, did it move the needle in some places a little bit? Sure. But I think in general, people tend to put a lot of weight on what celebrities say in regards to the political spectrum, because the systems of who gets elected and how the US government works are so much more complicated than that, and a celebrity endorsement is something that people feel like they have control over and something that they understand no matter what. But if anything, this situation tells me that going forward, any celebrity speaking up, you know, endorsing the Harris campaign is going to be critiqued for not advocating for Palestine, and ultimately for showing solidarity to a person who was in the Biden administration. What I will say is that I don't think Charli XCX was thinking about those implications once she tweeted this out. I'm pretty sure she probably just thought it was funny. And we also don't know if the Harris campaign will change their stance on Gaza. They have not put out an official agenda yet as of me recording this video. I think a big thing that's going to play into it is her vice president pick and whether or not they have a different stance on foreign policy. And it may be an issue that voters could push her more to the left on. We'll just have to wait and see. But that is all for me today, you guys. Let me know how you feel about the Brat meme. Let me know how you feel about Brat. Tell me what your favorite song is off the album if you've listened to it. Maybe I'll come into the comments and argue with you about it. And if you want to talk to me on other forms of social media, you can go to my Linktree, which is listed in the description down below, and connect with me at all the social media listed there, including Twitter, where I post way too much. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.